All right, everybody, let's begin. Gather around. See everybody again here as the world continues to figure out how to take steps and move along. Welcome, everybody. Grab a seat, gather around. We will do this as we usually. I'm gonna dive into kind of like a question that came on Instagram to start us off, because I think there's something important there to talk about, given the state of the world that we are all still in at the moment. And then, yeah, we'll tackle a couple things from Instagram. John, hello there. Welcome. And then, of course, yeah, over in the live chat, post questions. And I often miss questions that are over there. It flies by. So absolutely, if you notice, I didn't respond to something you posted over in the live chat. It was not intentional. Just with everything going by so quickly, and it is a tiny window on the side, I sometimes do miss it. So don't be afraid to post the question again, because if it is becoming kind of like a reassurance thing or a compulsion, I'll happily point that out. So if you noticed I missed it, or of course, always feel free to follow up afterwards. Get in touch. Post questions under the video once it goes live, or feel free to email. You can always visit my website, markfreeman.ca, and post questions there, and we can chat about it over email or get in touch on Instagram. So, yes, hello, everybody. Oh, thank you, Mac. Thank you for joining. Thank you for being a fan. I wanted to talk about this. Now, this came through on Instagram. Thank you, as always, to everybody on Instagram sharing such like really great questions. It's awesome that we can have conversations about these things that are so often not discussed. But this came through: existence overwhelmed, and I believe there were 3 exclamation marks. So technically, not a question. But if you're brain tech support, sometimes we don't have a question that we can ask about the squishy urge blob thought appliance in our skulls. We just are like, oh, it's not, it's smoking, and we want to get it fixed. So I think right now, I think a lot of people are running into a situation where you're just like, existence, and that's the response. So I think this is an important thing to talk about, particularly as we're at a point now, and I'm seeing this a lot working with clients and just in general, even with questions people are sending in and so on. We are kind of hitting a wall. And a lot of people might be noticing that and attaching a lot of meaning to it. Like, oh no, like what's going on? Suddenly I get really frustrated, really angry, lots of intrusive thoughts. I just feel burnt out. I'm really tired, and all sorts of different things around that. Maybe it's physical discomfort and problems coming up. And it can be so useful to recognize that mental fitness works just like physical fitness. And we really did a huge disservice to society, to the entire world, by approaching mental health as a medical disease and illness issue. Because then what happens is anything that comes up, we're like, oh no, this must be a problem, and I have to go and get somebody to treat it. Whereas you don't do that with physical fitness. If you go for a run and then you get to a point where you're just exhausted and you're breathing heavy and your body is leaking all over, and there's pains and muscles hurt and you feel it in your bones. Your entire body is in pain, and we need to stop. We don't then immediately turn around and call up the doctor and say, oh no, doctor, I was moving quickly and suddenly my body started leaking and my lungs didn't work and my heart was about to explode. What illness do I have? Because you don't have an illness. That's what your body does. Your body is working exactly as it was designed to. That's physical fitness. You haven't noticed you have an illness. You've just seen where your physical fitness level is at. And it really helps to take a similar approach with mental health. Right now, a lot of people are seeing where their mental fitness level is at. And yeah, absolutely, it comes with all sorts of difficult experiences. Maybe as well, your heart is racing and you're feeling a lot of different pains, maybe, in your head, your brain is racing, it's saying, oh, you've got to stop. Oh no, like if you keep going, something bad is going to happen. And so it can really help to see that like this is okay. This is very natural. And what we're seeing when we hit that wall is just where we're at. And of course, if we're doing lots of things with so much going on in the world, it's very natural that we're going to hit that wall. And so here's some things we can do about this. So one is to expect it to happen. Like everybody right now, so let's say back in the winter, we start with the pandemic, things start to change, but there's all sorts of things that could be going on in your life right now. You've had to become a teacher maybe to your kids. Your relationships have changed all of a sudden. You're not getting the supports that maybe you're used to around you. And all sorts of things are transforming, but then also maybe you deal with all sorts of systemic pressures and oppression in your life. And those may be ramping up right now. You may be getting engaged in movements to help transform society right now. So you have all of these things. You're like handling a pandemic and handling employment disruption and handling, massive systemic change. Expect to hit a wall. That should be the expectation. Just like if I go for a run this afternoon, I expect there's going to be a point where I cannot physically keep moving forward. So expect that. So what we want to do sometimes is actually find out where that is. Say, oh, okay, I see my brain has like reached the point as a muscle where it's just kind of worn out. And I can see that. So I need to stop and maybe I'll walk for a bit. And I'm going to take it easy. I'm going to take a break. And so one thing, it's useful to see that. So some people, maybe you've just noticed like your wall, your limit is like 3 months of global disruption. Maybe that's what you can handle. That's pretty good. You can go hard for 3 months. And then maybe, you need to walk for a bit and be kind to yourself. Maybe stretch. Okay, do a different exercise. And then you can run again. And who knows, maybe you can go for 4 months this time. Maybe actually you see that you want to keep going. So you go for 2 months. And this is where I find it's really important to talk about this. So in You Are Not a Rock, or it's in the mind workout as well, it's going to be step 17 to check out around this. So make happiness a practice. And what making happiness a practice is all about is really understanding the pace that works for us. And what are the things I need in my life so I can keep going and doing the things that make me happy. And so really check that out. If you've got the book, so You Are Not a Rock or the Mind Workout, of course, available in other languages as well, check out step 17. Because I think that is something we all really need to look at right now. And there's a tool in there I call the happiness practice. It's really about, scheduling in. You could think of it like your workout. But think about a workout. When we schedule in a workout, we're also looking at the breaks. Because we know if I just try to keep running nonstop, of course I can't do it. Or if I just, I'm just going to do 500-pound deadlifts over and over and over and over again without dropping the bar. Of course I can't do it. I won't get very far. But if I incorporate breaks, then I can go much further, right? Because I don't burn out. And that's what this is really about. So if you're noticing right now that you're burning out, you've just learned something really useful. How do you develop a happiness practice that paces you, that incorporates the supports you need? Because what you'll find is that actually if you very intentionally take rest more consistently before you think you need it, right? Before you feel you need it, because your brain's going to be like, no, you're fine, keep going. And then your brain will be like, we can't go anymore. If you incorporate that rest before you see that you need it, you'll find that you can keep on doing the things you want to do much harder, much further, much stronger. And when we do that, of course, when we are doing the things that we enjoy doing in life, we're much happier. So really consider that. If you're hitting a wall, it doesn't mean there's some weird problem in you. It's very natural. You're learning something. And so how can you take this learning and develop a happiness practice that paces your work so you can keep up this practice of being yourself with so much going on in the world. And as you are able to go further and further, you'll be able to help others around you kind of pace themselves too. So please, everybody, take care of yourselves this weekend and for all the weekends to come, because we are in this for the long haul, and we want to keep moving and creating changes in our own lives and in the systems around us. Okay, so welcome. I see a lot of people coming in on the side here. Welcome, everybody. Yeah, exactly. Ollie, if you're walking at the moment, that's great. Yeah, walk it, stretch it out, enjoy that. And then, when you're ready to get sprinting again up the mountain, go for it. Now, we'll go into a couple questions here from Instagram, and then we'll hop over to any questions that anybody has over on YouTube. So I think I will. So let's go for like a pretty general one here. This is a throwback when we're talking about mental health. Some people may be right now thinking, as you're hitting this wall, oh, I should really talk to a therapist or some kind of professional. And the question here is, do you think classical therapy could help people better understand themselves? So maybe a bit of a clarification explainer for everybody. Like if we're talking about classical therapy, something to think about is that therapy has changed a lot over the years. Because of course we do research and people develop newer forms of therapy and so on. But, and I was blown away when I learned this, there's nothing that requires a therapist, a psychologist, therapist, counselor, whatever, to practice evidence-based therapy. So your psychologist or whoever can still be a psychologist, and even if they're practicing like psychoanalysis, like something from like Freud era, like way back early 1900s, that really developed around like all of the misogyny and sexism of early psychotherapy. That's fair game. No one's gonna be told, there's no kind of overseeing body like there is in medicine that would say, hey, you can't be doing that thing that you're doing right there. So often when you reach out for a therapist, you could be getting a type of therapy that the research has now shown is no better than talking to a random person while having coffee. And that's just the reality of it. And so a lot of times when we talk now about classical therapy, that's what we're referring to. Stuff that like the research shows isn't that great. We have better forms of therapy now. But a lot of therapists are still going to be practicing those older types of therapy. And a lot of times that's just kind of like talk therapy is what a lot of it is about. Here's the thing though. And this is something once I was doing a workshop with Stephen T. Hayes, right, the professor, researcher, writer who developed, in collaboration with a lot of other researchers, acceptance and commitment therapy. I was doing a workshop with him, and there's all these professionals, and we're all there to learn about acceptance and commitment therapy. And one of the things he really emphasized to the professionals who were there was that the work with, say, a client depends so much on that professional's personal practice. Because something else the research has shown us that it kind of, the outcomes in therapy depends so much on the client kind of feeling comfortable and good with the professional. So basically, like, do they like them? And you would think that that's not necessarily going to be the determining factor, but consistently that's what we see coming up in the research. And so there is this element of you want the therapy to give the client tools that they can use. And so that's something that I always say people should really look for. Is the type of therapy you're doing going to give you stuff that you can then take and use without the therapist? That experience you have with a therapist or a professional, a coach, whoever, is going to depend a lot on whether they themselves have done a lot of work on their own mental health, so they can kind of build a healthy interaction and relationship with you. They're going to be open to touching any topic because they're not struggling with their insecurities around that topic anymore. So it's entirely possible then that, yeah, you could work with professionals doing kind of like classical therapy, but they themselves have done a lot of great work. And so they're able to share that with you. And so actually you do have an enjoyable experience there. And talking with somebody can be really useful for us. Often we miss that. But from a research perspective, it's not going to be any different than if you went and had a conversation with a friend of yours who's also taking really good care of their mental health and is able to make space for you to have difficult conversations. So it could be useful. It really depends on the therapist. But what happens then is you're not getting that tool set to take away and use on your own. And so that's where something newer like acceptance and commitment therapy, dialectical behavior therapy, that's where you're really getting a tool set that actually you can get rid of the therapist and just keep on using those tools on your own. And you're going to be really prepared to handle whatever comes up in the future. So that's what I would look at there. Are you getting awesome tools? Are you learning how to exercise on your own? Martino, as you said, I'm glad I could be of help on your journey getting up and over OCD there. I'm seeing here a question over here. Meow. You asked, so I assume you're asking about therapy. Can I get better without it? You're asking there. And so again, that's the thing to really think about or look at. We know we really need to shift from this idea that these are, you go to this person who's going to treat you. It's kind of like if you went out for a run and then your body did all these things and you had to stop running. If you went to the doctor, doctor, like treat this thing that's happening in my body. The doctor's going to say go run more and exercise more. And that's what's going to happen a lot in therapy. It's got to be about you doing the exercises. There's no therapist that can make changes for you. And so you can do this stuff on your own. In fact, you'll have to do it on your own at some point if you want to sustain recovery, if you want to keep building better mental health and fitness. But often, just like with physical fitness, at first we really struggle to make changes on our own. We really struggle to stay consistent. And if that's something we've really struggled with, then it can really help to get somebody else to help us learn how to start making changes. But I would always say the focus, like that's what I always say when I'm working with coaching clients, like my focus is to get rid of you as quickly as possible. And so we'll often start, even if I meet with somebody every week at first, we'll move maybe in the second month, maybe in the third month to every other week, and then maybe once a month. But it's still about them doing exercises every week because it's got to move to that spot where you understand all these skills and you know how to apply them. So, John, thank you so much for the donation. I appreciate it. It's a great support. I always love doing this, and thank you so much for the support. I see a question over here on the side on the YouTubes. How to concentrate on work when you have a lot of worries and uncertainty. So this actually is what concentration is. So it'd be like ask how do you lift weights if they're heavy? That is the practice. And so at first, approach it like an exercise. So you might set aside an amount of time. So you know what, I'm going to focus on this work I need to do for 20 minutes. Or whatever, maybe it's only 15 minutes at first. Just like how we were talking about, see what the limit is. But then start to get proactive with it, because you don't want to just wear yourself out every time and collapse. So how far can you get it? Step away, take a break, have something else set up that you can go and do, so you're not just like, I need to distract myself, and you hop on your phone and then it's 2 hours later. So have something you can do, take a quick break, and then come back for, maybe you go from 15 minutes to 20 minutes. And then again, go do that thing you have set up. Like one of my favorites, just like to go and clean something. Might wash the dishes, sweep something really quickly, and then come back. You get back down to work. And then you just keep extending it. And that is the work. You can't expect to have the skill to focus if we don't practice it. Just like it's not weird if you can't lift weights if you don't practice lifting weights. And if you don't practice lifting weights, then all the weights are heavy. This maybe is a great question to talk about right here. How to set goals without making it about changing feelings. Because often when we start working on mental health, it's all about like, I want to get rid of this feeling. I want to control this feeling. I want to go and get this other feeling. We're often trying to get stuff. And of course, the moment we're trying to get feelings, we only ever experience the opposite feeling. So how to set goals without making about chasing a feeling? Again, use things like physical fitness. There we really understand you're gonna, with something like weightlifting, let's use that example again. Each week it might be about adding on an extra 10 pounds to an exercise I'm doing. And I want it to feel difficult. I want to pursue that burn. And there we label it as a good thing. If for whatever reason in mental health, we've taken all of these feelings that are actually indicators of us moving forward, and we've labeled them as bad and things we should avoid. And so, of course, we just struggle more and more and more. Just like if we went into the gym and we're like, lifting the weights made my muscles feel weird, so I stopped. That's not going to make you stronger. That'll just keep making you weaker and weaker. And more things will cause that feeling you hate. They'll feel difficult to pick up. So yeah, really track the action. So it's going to be about, like in mental health, if I notice, say, for example, it's around social anxiety. I notice that talking to people makes me really anxious, and I avoid anything to do with other people and stuff like that. I don't ask people for things. I don't ask for help. I would set up an exercise, this right now we're kind of socially distanced. So it might be, for my job right now, I'm going to this week, I'm going to send out 3 emails to people I don't know and ask them if we can have a virtual coffee. And then I'm going to make sure I do 1 virtual coffee with a stranger this week. And then next week, we add 5 pounds to that. So what would make it a little more difficult? Maybe next week I'll organize kind of like a group online party or something like that, and risk that nobody shows up because I know I'm really afraid of that, feeling rejected. And so that's the heavy weight that I'm going to lift. And doing these is about tracking the actions. Did I do something heavier this week, more difficult this week than I did last week? And all of those things are aligned with our values and the things we care about. And so that's what it's really about. It's saying, look, I want to build relationships. How am I going to build relationships this week? Next week, how am I going to build relationships more? And that's what it's got to be about. Because if you do it on feelings, you are 100% guaranteed to get whatever feeling you're trying to avoid. And then you'll be very unhappy. And I wanted to cover this question as well. Another one from Instagram. I see there's a bunch of questions coming up over on YouTube. We'll get to that. This question is related because it's also on values. So I thought I would talk about it right now. Tips on letting go of intrusive fears when they're the same as my number 1 value, health. So this may be a big one for people right now. Still got a lot, particularly my hope and compassion to all of our friends in the U.S. right now. I know the pandemic in a lot of states is really ramping up there, and so probably a lot of people right now really worried about a lot of things related to health. But here's the thing to remember, and this might be one thing to look at. If you're like, I really value health, but now my intrusive thoughts or my fears are all about health. Those will go together. Always. And so if you think that's that's strange or that's a barrier, that would be one thing to just notice. That's typically how it would work. I can't think of a situation right now where it wouldn't go that way, but I'm just going to say typically, often, most of the time, because that's why your brain throws up intrusive thoughts. Right? Like if you really care about your family, and of course your brain is going to go, oh, what if something bad happens to your family? If you really care about doing the things you want to do in life, of course your brain is going to worry about, oh no, what if you develop psychosis and you can't do the things you care about? What if you get arrested for something you didn't do and put in prison and then you can't do the things you care about? What if you do something that makes people judge you and then you can't do the things you care about? What if you do something that makes people judge you and then they hate you and you spend the rest of your life alone, living under a rock? That's totally what the brain is going to do. So one, try not to see that as a barrier, but you're seeing like the usual judging compulsions that get in there, the usual ways our brains create barriers. So that's one. But then the other thing is, to bring it to actions, and to really make the pivot. So what we want to do is look at, okay, like what are the actions I do that proactively take care of my health? How am I going to do those things? Recognizing that, of course, doing lots of compulsions is going to make my health worse. So if I care about health, it does not make sense to be choosing to make my mental health worse. So often what happens with that, so I had all sorts of health anxieties. I had to look and say, okay, I'm going to cut out these compulsions. And that means my brain is going to be terrified that we're now going to have all of these other health issues. But look, here is how I'm going to proactively take care of my health. And so it's really about coming up with that workout plan where the brain is afraid and wants us to be reactive, but we say, look, my brain is going to throw up stuff, but I don't want to make my mental health worse. And look, here's how I take care of my health and fitness. This is the thing I do. This is the thing I care about. And then whenever the brain throws up the anxiety, it's about making that pivot, really giving the brain a hug. Like, I understand, brain. I understand you're just trying to help me because I care about my health. But look, here's the action I'm going to do right now that is taking care of my health, that's building good health, rather than kind of digging a mental illness hole and creating an illness out of the fear of the possibility of an illness. Okay. So really, take some time. And you might do it with somebody like your doctor, somebody like that. That's often something I suggest to people, especially if you notice you're checking for reassurance all the time with doctors or somebody like that. Ask them, what should you look for? When should you go and see them? And then, and then absolutely, there's totally going to be an element of risk in that. And with any of these things, there's going to be uncertainty. And so that is often going to be the other thing that we're really working on here, is recognizing that, we don't control many aspects of our health, and random, unexpected, uncontrollable bad things do happen. And that's when we need to practice trust. Saying like, look, I don't know if these things will happen. It's entirely possible they could. And I'm going to trust myself to handle it. With so many things going on, that's where we need to put our time and energy. Not trying to control all of these different possibilities and chase certainty, because we really don't know. But we can practice trusting ourselves. We can say, look, you know what? Whatever comes up, whatever weird, difficult, strange situations I get thrown into, and all things are possible right now in the world we live in. Murder hornets, like if tomorrow I get swarmed by murder hornets, well, I don't know, something is this, I'm at the hospital with coronavirus and the world is imploding, etc. I trust myself to handle it. So I trust you. These things can happen. So right away, I'm going to hop over to a question here on YouTube. And Sarah, so you started off your question with according to neuroscience. And I find this is actually, I say, like, quick tip for everybody out there, you kind of know the moment in any kind of article or something like that says, according to neuroscience, as it's opening, be really skeptical about whatever comes in it, because this has become this easy way that writers will try to kind of feign authority now by saying, oh, well, neuroscience says. And this is what's called like neuromysticism. It's kind of like it's just like saying, well, God said the following. And then we're like, okay, well, I better believe it. But that, like, according to neuroscience, doesn't like mean anything. And we want to put on, if we're going to talk science, like, let's put on our critical thinking magic helmets and examine these things. And so you've got a question here, one that people often run into challenges around. So you could even just take the neuroscience part out of it, because this is an uncertainty and a fear around control that many people run into. So you got according to neuroscience, our brains make choices, or it's our brains that make choices. And after that, we become aware of them. Doesn't this contradict the concept of making healthy choices? No. But even I would even question. So and you'd have to actually look at the research, because that research that you're probably referring to, there's been a lot more research on it since then. It's become kind of controversial, and yeah, like the reality is, I think, and this is the thing. This is why it can be so great, if you want to work on your mental health, to work with somebody that actually has made these changes, or even if it's physical fitness, and not just even like if you're going to work on physical fitness, work with somebody that's made the changes that you want to make, that's doing the things that you want to do. And that's where we really learn how to make changes. And it's so useful to recognize that we can notice the stuff that pops up, and then that pops up in our heads, and we can make choices. And yeah, that's just a reality. And the kind of, watch out for often neuromysticism, neurodeterminism can create a lot of fear, because we're so afraid of being controlled and not doing the things we want to do. And we can recognize that. You can notice that. Notice, oh yeah, I'm afraid of this because I'm afraid I won't be able to make the changes I want to make. I'm afraid I won't get over these challenges. But again, like, give that brain a hug. You know why it's afraid of that. You want to do the things you want to do. So how are you going to do those things today? And then we do them. Okay. Let's see what else is happening over here. So Orny, I see you're asking a bunch of questions about, it looks like, so a bunch of questions checking on sexuality. And so actually, the checking for reassurance on those is just going to create more uncertainty and more fear. And it can really help to take a step back. So often we get caught up in the topics of the uncertainties that our brains throw up. But the brain only cares about the compulsions, right? Like the brain right now is just like go and check, go and find out if this is possible. Go and see, could this happen? What's going to happen with your sexuality? What does this mean? But the brain just wants us, right, to just chase those, just keep chasing those compulsions, and that's all it cares about. So it'll always look for whatever topic gets us to do that. And so if we're chasing after that, it'll just keep finding more and more ways to do that. So we want to notice that it's an uncertainty. The content doesn't matter, and I don't have to chase that. Instead, what do I value doing today? What am I going to do today? I saw just on down here, before we do some more questions, Arinel, you asked, please, can you give a low down, I think, on acceptance and commitment there? Oh, yeah, there you correct it. Low down. The a lowdown on acceptance commitment therapy. Can you explain what you mean by that? What is a lowdown on acceptance commitment therapy? Oh, thank you so much for the $5 donation. That is a big help. Thank you. I see extinct. That's a great first name. That's cool. That's an interesting thing your parents named you there. Extinct. I see you saying, I hope my OCD goes soon. Here's the thing to watch out for everybody, and this comes up a lot where we say like, oh, I hope it goes soon. It's about, again, like, rather than see it as like this thing, like, oh no, I got this illness that's attacked me and I've got to go and get somebody to get rid of it, or I hope the illness just goes away. It can really help to approach this stuff as fitness, right? As like mental fitness. And when we notice we're really struggling, that is kind of like just an indicator of where our fitness is at. And the things we've been doing before have led to where it's at. And so we need to make changes. It's just like, if I don't lift weights or something like that, let's say I'm like, I'm not, it's really difficult. I don't want to do it. It makes me feel weird. Your muscles are sore after. You sit down on the toilet and then you can't get up again. You're just stuck there for days. So then I say like, okay, I'm not gonna lift weights, and then and then I have to lift something heavy, and then it's very difficult to lift. And I might say, oh, like, I just really hope this feeling of struggling with heavy things goes away. But it's not going to go away unless I do something to build the skills that I now see I'm struggling with. And so when we run into something like this, in our heads, what we're seeing there is like, oh, okay, I'm struggling to lift this heavy thing. So how do I start to build the skills to do that? Because if I just, oh, that's difficult, I'm just gonna sit over here, avoid that thing, and hope this feeling goes away or this whatever goes away. It's not going anywhere, because we need to make changes. We need to build skills. I think that was like the biggest insight. But what I found so exciting about when I went to get therapy, I'd say effective therapy, the first time I found a great therapist, was learning that, oh, like, I can make changes here. So just like with physical fitness, like if we want to build skills and leave this stuff behind, it's 100% possible. And not to see that as some kind of burden or bad thing. Like, it is awesome. If you want to start to make changes and leave this stuff behind, you can do that. You don't have to wait to see if something kind of goes away or changes. Okay. Oh, thank you, Aaronelle. Let's get into the explanation of the lowdown on acceptance and commitment therapy. Okay, so I saw a psychologist at my uni, and we talked about my depression and anxiety, and also OCD thought patterns. She recommended your channel. Oh, thank you, therapist. And also that she thinks that ACT would be best for me to accept myself because I'm trans, and also due to many other things: absent father, death of father, and dealing with my life. I just didn't know where to start with knowing how to really accept my pain and past and how to face it, truly moving forward into finding peace and acceptance of my life. Thank you. Oh, Arnell, thank you so much for sharing that and explaining more. I think, yeah, like this is where acceptance and commitment therapy has become very popular, and where I find it really effective. And so, yeah, you definitely could check out research that's been going on acceptance commitment therapy, looking at all of these kind of different areas. What I really like about acceptance commitment therapy is that it recognizes that in the present moment, we are dealing with so much that is both happening in our brain right now, can be happening in society around us, that is kind of throwing things at us, and has also happened in the past. And recognize that that trauma and that pain becomes kind of like scar tissue. And so it's there right now, even though it happened before, and then it kind of affects how we move in the present. And so the thing that acceptance commitment therapy is building is what is called psychological flexibility. And so it's really about bringing mobility back into our lives where either pain and trauma from the past or difficulties in the present have kind of forced us into this kind of rigid position where like things are painful, we don't want to move in particular ways, and maybe some things are like very heavy we've been talking about because we've been, because of pain in the past, we've kind of been avoiding doing particular things. So you could look at acceptance and commitment therapy as a way to do mental physiotherapy to start to move in those ways that we've been avoiding, recognizing that the pain is there. And so there is going to be pain as we do that, and we expect that because we're saying, oh yeah, look, that's painful for me because of this experience. And then a lot of the exercises are about saying like, okay, how do I make space for this experience? And I don't have to fix it, and I don't have to change it, and it's there. So how can I make space for it? Let it be there. Well, doing this action that I value. And it's through this exercise of kind of touching the pain and doing the thing we value that we start to bring flexibility and mobility back into our lives. And so you asked there, I just don't know where to start. And I think something else that's really neat about acceptance commitment therapy that I like compared to a lot of kind of older types of therapy is that the older types of therapy used to be very focused on, we've got to fix the problem. And acceptance and commitment therapy actually would say the place to start is looking at where you want to go. That we don't want to put those things that have happened to us in charge of where we step next. And that it really is about this practice of being ourselves. And that could really be something to take on. And so the first place that I always suggest to people, and this is, so to give you an example, so like often, somebody will reach out to do coaching work or something like that, and like give like a super detailed email of all of these like terrible things that have happened and things they're struggling with. And one of the first things we do right away in the email, as we're talking and kind of exploring what we'll work on together, is shift the focus. So I'll often, say to people, okay, that's great. Like, or that's very difficult. But where do you want to go? Like, what if none of that was there? What would you do tomorrow? How would you practice being yourself? And so we actually kind of shift. I find it's really useful. Shift. Where would you go? How do you be you? And then we look at, okay, well, now there's the scars and the bruises and this trauma is here. So what skills do we need to work on to work that out as we move towards that place we want to go? But I find that the experiences from the past, they totally try to puppet us around. They're like, no, you come fix me first. Figure out how to accept me. But we want to say, okay, I hear you. I notice that pain. That pain is here. Absolutely. But first, let's look at where we're going. And then we come back to, okay, how do I move forward with this pain? And so that's the spot. That's the spot that I would start at first. We don't have to be puppets played by pain and systems around us that may be causing a lot of pain, or individuals in the past that are causing a lot of pain. But we also want to recognize that that's there, and we make space for it, and explore how to interact with it differently, but always in service of being ourselves and going where we want to go. So that would be my lowdown on acceptance commitment therapy there. But yeah, really, all the best to you as you get started on working on this. These are like difficult things, but at first it can feel like a knot all wrapped up. But you know, you're already, you're seeing what's going on and starting to loosen the strings. And yeah, you find very quickly the knot comes undone, and we move on to do the things we care about. So Aaronelle, yeah, thank you. Yeah, if you ever have any more questions about that, of course, always feel free to reach out. Yeah, exactly. Taking a back seat. I don't know if you already know this. There's lots of acceptance commitment therapy exercises where you actually imagine the pain or the voice in our head as like a little annoying kid in the back seat, and you drive, right? You're in the driver's seat. You've got your values as the GPS. You've got your foot on the gas and your hands on the steering wheel. So enjoy driving wherever you want to go. All right, thank you. Sal, I see, thank you so much for the donation. And you asked a question there, what if the mental compulsions are what you value? Without, maybe if you want to share a more specific example of that, because I would say like values can't be compulsions. So I would see those as like, I would say probably not, but maybe we can dig into that more. You can send over any details or questions you have about that. I am gonna scroll up a bit here over on YouTube. So Arthur, I see you asking a question. We've got another question here about sexuality. Because again, it can really help to take a step back with the like I was explaining earlier. It's actually the compulsion isn't the checking, because even like you've noticed, you've already sent that question by email. That question, the explaining and needing to go over the details again and again, that's the compulsion. And so we just notice that. We notice, oh yeah, my brain is using this because it knows I'm going to go and do compulsions, and I don't have to do those compulsions. Trunks. Way back there, I missed that earlier, but you said, yeah, you were just saying thanks. I'm glad you find them helpful. And yeah, it's great that we can have this. I would say thank you to everybody. I always appreciate your support as well, your comments, like sharing the videos that I know so many of you do. It is just great that we can have these conversations. Because yeah, I so wish that this kind of stuff existed when I was starting out on therapy. It's so weird that there's not more of it. I did think when I started this that, yeah, like I would just do this. I would make a couple videos and then people would be like, oh, you can get over mental illness? Like, oh. And then we would all just get over mental illness. Unfortunately, it has not turned out that way. So we must keep making videos. Prank call. You said, every time I do a compulsion, I think something bad is going to happen. And then I have to ask if I'm okay. Yep. So that's, yeah, this is something to watch out for. It's really common. When we do a compulsion, it kind of spins up the compulsion machinery in the brain. And the brain is like, okay, this person's open to doing more compulsions right now. Here's more uncertainties to chase after. And so just like we were talking about there with like the uncertainty compulsions around sexuality, yeah, just like notice them. And yeah, there's the brain like trying to chase more compulsions. And yeah, we can just let the uncertainty be there right now and look at like, okay, how do I be myself in this moment? So Aisha, you're saying, can you talk through the relationship between fighting OCD pain with acceptance commitment and fighting depression? Oh, right away, I would link them together. So I was diagnosed with depression first, diagnosed with OCD later. It really helped me to recognize that like I only have one brain. And just like we would see with physical fitness, like we would talk about physical fitness is kind of like a complete thing. is really approaching mental health and fitness the same. And again, it can really help to recognize, because the brain is, like I was just saying there, is going to use whatever gets us to do compulsions. And so sometimes that might be an intrusive thought or an anxiety. Right? So, for example, use the social anxiety example. If we experience some anxiety about going to a social event, so we avoid it, we might label that as social anxiety. But then if I feel really bad and I don't want to get out of bed, I'm just like, oh, like everything sucks. It's terrible. It's pointless. Why bother? I don't even feel like it. That doesn't feel good. It won't feel good. And so I stay and I avoid getting out of bed. We might label that as depression. But the compulsion was the same. Right? The same compulsion. That there was an unwanted feeling. I have a bad feeling about this thing, and if I go, it's going to get worse. That's what it was with the social event. Same thing just happened there with bed. Oh, I feel really bad. And also if I go and do this thing I want to do, I'm going to feel worse. So I avoid it. It can really help to start to look at these as the same thing. Because the brain can throw up any of them. And this is something people notice as they start to work on recovery too. The moment you start to cut out compulsions, the brain moves. It's totally natural that it sees like, oh, okay, you don't react to anxiety anymore. So how can I get the compulsions? Okay, well, maybe you'll react to a physical pain. Maybe you'll react to a different type of emotional pain, like depression. Maybe I can get you wrapped up in mental compulsions. Like we'll latch onto something like false memories or something like that. The moment you cut out a compulsion, the brain will move. So really look at the patterns at work, because the pattern is going to be the same. So if we're avoiding doing things we want to do because of an unwanted feeling we dislike, look for other ways that happens. And so that's what I'd say right there. Like, look at the things you've labeled as OCD and look at the things you've labeled as depression. How can you do the things you value in either situation? Let's do, we only got 8 minutes left. Here's a good one. Over here on Instagram. Am I suppressing thoughts if I'm stopping myself from ruminating or questioning them? I know this one comes up a lot, so I wanted to talk about this. There's this, so the idea got out there, and you really see how the brain loves to latch onto things we read online. So you might have seen this thing saying like suppressing thoughts is bad. And so, and that's great. It's great that gets out there. And this is partly because old school classical therapy was all about like, we're gonna fix thoughts and like, oh, you had an irrational thought. Well, let's now like get rid of it and add up evidence for why it's wrong. And that doesn't work, right? That just tells the brain, oh wow, this is really important. And then it gets into a debate and it's like, well, what about this reason? You haven't thought about that. Well, actually, you have evidence why this is true, and so on. And so it just makes things worse. So yeah, we don't need to suppress thoughts. But then what this gets us into is a trap that the brain loves, right? Because we then worry that if the thought comes up, we need to give it our time and energy. And then we do, because we think like, oh, this thought came up. Oh, if I can't leave it, because that'd be a compulsion and that's bad, and then I won't get over this. And so, yeah, so really take a step back and see like compulsions. One way of seeing it is like compulsions and the things that make our mental health worse is just spending time and energy on things we don't need to spend time and energy on. And so if the brain throws up a thought, that's kind of like me walking past ugly wallpaper. So I'm walking down the hallway and there's some ugly wallpaper there. That's how I see it. There's wallpaper. Just like, oh, my brain threw up a thought. I see it. There's a thought. The thing is, if we think, oh no, I can't, I'm walking by this ugly wallpaper means I'm suppressing ugly wallpaper. That's wrong. In order to get over ugly wallpaper, I must stand in front of it and stare at it until it's not ugly. And that's the compulsion. And so you can see your brain now. This is exactly what I was just talking about. The brain moves. The moment you cut out one compulsion, the brain is going to be like, oh, so you want to, be certain about recovery? Oh, well, what about this? And then it throws up that, oh no, maybe you're suppressing a thought or something like that. Maybe you should stand in front of the wallpaper and look at it until you feel better. And that is just more of the compulsions. And so really just have that awareness of how do you want to spend your time and energy in life. When you walk past a thought or ugly wallpaper, yeah, they're there. That's fine. And now we get to go and do the things we care about. And kind of like we were just talking about there, yeah, like it may be that that's some very real pain. Maybe it's something from the past, this kind of bruise or scar tissue there. So again, yeah, we notice it. Yeah, it's there. How can I make space for it? How can it be in the back seat? And I'm going to keep on going. Because yeah, maybe the ugly wallpaper, I'm having a conversation with somebody and they are standing in front of the ugly wallpaper. And so my brain is like, oh, you should stop paying attention to them and watch the ugly wallpaper. Oh, if you keep paying attention to them, you're ignoring the ugly wallpaper, and then you're gonna see ugly wallpaper the rest of your life. So you should stop paying attention to them and go pay attention to the ugly wallpaper. But no, that's just us again letting the brain puppet us around. We want to give our time and energy to that person that we're talking with, we're listening to, and so that's what we do. And so yeah, if you see the brain getting caught on that, I know that's a really common one. Get a lot of questions on that. Just come back to how do I spend my time and energy in life. Yeah, thoughts are there, and this is part of it too. Is actually by walking past it, we start to show the brain that it doesn't have to be afraid of that stuff. That it's wrong about it. Like it's judgment. This is like a bad thought you need to fix. That's a big part of the problem. It's not. It's a thought. They're all thoughts. It's all brain stuff, and we can do the things we want to do in life. Okay, we're coming up on the end. So I can see, okay, watch out everybody over here in the chat box over on the side. We're just gonna wrap up in a second, but I can see a bunch of you are getting into like just giving reassurance and checking for reassurance from each other. Do not do that. This is not compulsion practice time. That will make things worse. So let's do one more question from over here on the YouTube. Linda, how to deal with pure OCD thoughts, emotions, states, strong panic moments. So that is like we've been talking about. That stuff really is the ugly wallpaper, or the scar tissue, or the bruise. Something I always encourage people to watch out for. Is this idea of pure OCD thoughts, emotions, states, strong panic moments, and so on. That these things are pure OCD, and we can get very attached to that label, and it can become a real barrier. If you do anything as a reaction to the stuff you mentioned, it's not pure O, right? The stuff you do as a reaction, that's the compulsions. And so that's the stuff we need to work on changing. And it's very common now. The label pure OCD has come to mean just any OCD. I saw it twice this week. I saw mental health advocates who have like large followings on the internet describing themselves as having pure OCD that caused them to do checking online. And they were saying like, oh, like pure OCD is so strange. It just makes me compulsively check online for hours. And like that's a great example of how pure OCD is like no longer means what it's supposed to mean, because it's originally supposed to be like purely obsessional, which means no like online checking and stuff like that, because that's a compulsion. And so really watch out for that. So I don't know, there's not more details in your question there, but yeah, really take a step back and look if there's stuff happening as a result of those emotions, even things like avoidance. So avoidance is a very visible external compulsion. That's where we want to shift our focus. So again, looking at like, what are the things I want to do in life? If I'm not doing the things I want to do in life because of a thought or feeling, that avoidance is the compulsion. So what I want to work on is doing those things I want to do in life. So that may be an excellent note to end on, because that's what it all comes down to at the end of the day. So everybody, wherever you are, doing whatever you're doing, this weekend and in the week ahead, yeah, really take that, look at what are the things you want to be doing in life? What are the things you want to be giving your time and energy to? And start there. And you can even do this like for the week ahead. Like really look, this week, how do I want to spend my time and energy? Keep it simple. Going back to what we talked about at the beginning. What's going to be your happiness practice this week? How are you going to pace yourself? Doing those things you care about. And then on the way to doing that, yeah, there's a lot of stuff your brain is going to throw up that you're going to cut out. You're going to notice it. Be like, oh yeah, there's some pain. There's a memory from the past. There's a fear. It can be here. I don't have to change that. I don't have to spend my time and energy fixing the ugly wallpaper. It can be there. And what do I want to do? What do I want to spend my time and energy on? So that is their mission. I know that is what I'm going to do myself. I love to do that on Sunday evening. It's just look at the week ahead and really think, how am I going to spend my time and energy this week in a way that's like good for me and good for those around me. So to everybody, thank you so much for joining, taking time out of your weekend to be here. As always, yeah, thank you so much for the support. Thank you, everybody, for the donations. And if you ever have any questions or anything like that, you can always feel free to send those on here on YouTube, over on my website, on Instagram as well. And shout out to everybody on Instagram. Thank you for your questions. I'll be answering a bunch of those there as well. So everybody, thank you so much. Have a good weekend. And we will talk to you all very soon.